All right. Hello, I'm Jeremy, and today I wanted to talk about the Biden administration and their spending and the inflation that is hitting, all the lies and the ridiculous nonsense that's going on. So, here with the Colorado Department of Transportation in 2014, in 1992, one tax dollar collected would purchase $1 of construction work, accounting for inflation. That same dollar will likely purchase less than 20 cents of goods and labor by 2034. And so they have a chart here, and we're about right here. This is the closest 2022, 2016 is kind of a way right there. And it's just gone down. And so the source is the Colorado Department of Transportation. And this is actually something that they did at 2014. So this is beyond this point. It's just kind of their guess, and it's because, well, yeah, the trend has been that it's been going down. Kind of did a little bit of a leveling off, but still a downward slope, and they continue to see it going down. And with what the Biden administration is doing, it's exactly what's going on. Also, we have one of these word pads, which is I've labeled it economic exploitation. This is not about changing anybody's minds. It's about showing the lines, whether they're intentional or not. And this is a very crude, rough draft look of how some of the website is going to be. This is actually a very small part of it. And it's because I'm tired of the lies, I'm tired of the nonsense and the trash and all this garbage. I want a place where I'm not getting screwed over by anything. And this also means things such as things that you purchase. Whenever I go to Amazon, for example, I do like seeing what Amazon's choice is. Amazon's choice is usually the product in the category that has seen the highest amount of sales. And they usually also have a very high star rating with that. But whenever you look at their star rating, you see this constantly. Is that they will give it a 1 star because the item arrived at their house broken. That has absolutely nothing to do from whoever it is that you bought it off of Amazon, because Amazon's like eBay. There's all these small little stores, or in other words, people, businesses, and they just use Amazon as a platform to sell their merchandise from. Walmart does this, eBay does this, Amazon's not the only one. FedEx, UPS, whoever it is that's shipping this, they're not supposed to take a package if it's damaged. So if it got to you and it's damaged, that is a problem with the shipping company. Whether if it's UPS, USPS, United States Postal Service, or FedEx, or whatever the carrier may be, that's them. They're the ones who deserve the 1 star. It's not this product. That's wrong. You see it constantly, and it's just another lie. It's another thing. Now, I would say that a lot of that is unintentional, and it's because that 5-star ranking system is garbage. Anyways, this has all come about because I came across this video from Ben Shapiro. The video is titled Biden struggles to read the teleprompter as inflation skyrockets. I have several videos and things that I'm going to point to here. I'll have links in the description below for all of this stuff so you can look over it yourself. So if you too are tired of being lied to and manipulated and having things get worse, then like, subscribe, give it a thumbs up. I've got Patreon and Subscribestar. All that stuff is in the description below. And so we will get into it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to listen to a little bit of what Ben Shapiro has to say, little snippets here and there.
Sycophantic, drooling media coverage since his inauguration. And then this week, inflation hit. The border crisis continues to marinate. We've got war in the Middle East. And all this is happening on the back of a horrible employment report.
And all these things are related, which is why I'm doing all this. I tell you what, this segment just really kind of shines well with what it is that I want to cover today. So I wanted to show this little snippet of this politician lying.
Says that the DHS secretary apparently has short-term memory loss. He says he doesn't remember saying that migrants should come. He did. He said, I'm not saying migrants shouldn't come. I'm just saying they shouldn't come right now. He was reminded of this And Alejandro Mayorkas was like, I don't remember saying that. Me? Who? What?
You remember saying, don't you, that we're not telling you not to come. Those are your words that you said in a press conference. You said that, right?
I don't recall saying that. I don't believe
You don't recall saying that.
Do not come now. Give us the time to rebuild a system that was entirely dismantled in the prior administration.
I can say quite clearly, don't come. And what we're in the process of getting set up, and it's not going to take a whole long time, is to be able to apply for asylum in place. So don't leave your town or city or community.
So, Secretary Mayorkas, why aren't migrants listening to you, especially when you say don't come now?
So, yeah, he just flat out, unequivocally just lied. Why? Why are politicians allowed to do this? It just drives me up the wall. It's not really related to what I wanted to talk about today, but this is what the whole thing is that I'm building, is that I'm tired of these lies, and these people need to be held accountable. You just don't get to change your mind on a whim. There's nothing wrong that something could have happened where he could have changed his mind with this. I don't like that. I don't think that they should be changing their minds. I guess there would be some circumstances where you could, but for the most part, there's no reason why there shouldn't be a website that's up that has this politician. These are the things that they've run on, and so now these are the things that they have to stick to. It's not, oh, I'm going to run on these issues, then this is going to get me elected, and then whenever I'm on office, I'm going to flip-flop on all this stuff. No, you have to stick to it, no matter who you are. This is what the people wanted, were these issues that you ran on, so now it's time to put your money where your mouth is. Now, I guess that there should be exceptions to that. So, for example, if we have a pandemic, a real one, which I don't believe that COVID is at all by any stretch of the imagination. If you do, that's fine. I'm not here to change your minds. I'm just here to show the lies like this guy's doing. He could have said something along the lines, yes, new information about COVID coming from the CDC, for example. Here's the information, and so now we are making adjustments to our policies. It's like, okay, that'll be a little more acceptable, other than him just randomly changing his mind or just flat out lying. Anyways, let's continue. I'm going to tear into Ben a little bit. He talks about how the Biden administration is going to start construction on the border wall with a levee. And it's like, yeah, that doesn't mean that he's constructing the border wall. It's that there's a levee there. So it's like, no, you're kind of inflating that into something that I don't think it is. It's like the levee has to be built, and so the wall is just getting maintenance as well, or being redone as well. So now let's go ahead and listen to this little segment.
Meanwhile, inflation is here. According to the New York Times, the central fact of the American economy in mid-2021 is that demand for all sorts of goods and services has surged, but supplies are coming back slowly, with the economy acting like a creaky machine that was turned off for a year and has some rusty parts. Well, actually, the economy is acting like you would expect it to act when you...
Yeah, and this is all expected, and it's because people don't know what they're talking about. They put in their little 2 cents, and you're asking the wrong people.
Pay people to stay home, and when you tell them it is unsafe to go back to work. The good news is that the Biden administration has no idea what to do with inflation. I mean, no clue. So Jen Psaki's like, the inflation is just a sign that everything is going great.
So let's go ahead and let's move over to the WordPad here. I'm going to increase this size a little bit. Economic exploitation. This is not about changing anybody's minds. Again, this is about showing lies, whether they're intentional or not. And the left likes to make up words, and they're just completely nonsensical. And so I'm going to create my own phrases, which are going to be as accurate as I can phrase them. So the first definition is surplus worker exploitation. Now, I'm not talking about the Marxism labor exploitation. That's completely different. They're talking about how whenever you go and work for somebody, if you're getting paid $20 an hour, you're getting paid $20 an hour because you're generating $25 worth an hour, and that's how these businesses make all this money, is that they're getting $5 extra out of you, or whatever it is that it may be. and then they pull this all together from all the workers, and then this is how you get like dividends or something like that. And it's like, yes, that's absolutely right, but it's not exploitation because you're not being forced into doing this. This is a voluntary transaction. Nobody is going to say, yeah, I'm going to hire you so I can break even. Who the hell's going to accept something like that? Who's going to do all this extra work just so that they can break even? And so the first definition that I have here for the first one is surplus worker exploitation. And I've defined this as the use of government powers to unnaturally and artificially create a surplus of workers that are then exploited by companies by allowing them to take on workers at reduced wages. So what this is that, say you have any job that has 100 people who are looking for employment, and then there are 10 job openings, and it doesn't matter if it's with the same company or different companies. You could have a worker who says, you know what, I was making $30 an hour and full benefits. Well, there's going to be someone else over here who's going to say, I'll do it for full benefits and at $22 an hour. I will do it for partial benefits for $15 an hour. I will do it for minimum wage because I'm desperate. Then an illegal immigrant will say, well, I have fake paperwork. I bribed everybody that needed to be bribed so I could get this fake paperwork. And I will work for $5 an hour. You can put me down on the books for minimum wage. You can just keep the extra. But I'm also getting all these welfare benefits. So I have my housing and clothing and food, HUD, food stamps and all this. So I don't need that much, because I have a higher living standard than what I did whenever I was from Guatemala or wherever it is that I'm from. And they also have enough money to send back. And this is because this is exactly something that happened with the Swift company up in Cactus. They have a plant, and this is what happened, where a Hispanic woman was interviewed, and she told this exact story, where they were being paid $14 an hour. Then they let the plant standard slide, and because it was a butchering plant, there's a lot of blood and guts, and so it makes for unsafe work conditions. Whenever you don't clean up, people started to get injured. They ran out of their sick leave, and they lost their jobs. They got replaced by somebody else whose name was John Smith, didn't speak a word of English, and they would hire them on for minimum wage. Sometimes they also would pay extra in order to get the job in the first place, and they weren't getting minimum wage from the company, because what are they supposed to do? Go to the government and say, I'm not getting paid minimum wage as an illegal immigrant? No, there's nothing that you can do. Whenever you break the law, you can't go to the law for help. So that's the way that you work past this. And so you do not want a surplus of workers. You want the opposite. You want a surplus of jobs. So if you reverse it, where you have 100 job openings from different companies, but you only have 10 people who are out in the market looking, then the opposite happens. The companies start saying, well, I'll pay you minimum wage. Well, another company is going to be like, man, we are growing. We're doing really well. I will pay you $15 an hour. Then another company will come along and say, you know what? Hey, I can actually do better than that. We're growing across the entire state, not just in the city. I can pay you $19 an hour and throw in some benefits. And then another company's like, well, we're going not just across the state, but we're opening into several states. We're going across half the nation, whatever, globally into these other countries or whatever. And so they can keep offering more and more and more. You want the businesses fighting for that. And that's the way that you raise the standard of living for the people who are at the bottom. In order for this to happen, though, one of the things that helps is a minimum wage exploitation. And so again, this is the use of government powers to unnaturally and artificially rise the wages of workers, thus hampering the growth of competition, of competitive new businesses, innovation in industry, and prevents the removal of inadequate business structures. It's like, well, yes, whenever you increase the minimum wage, you have problems with businesses kind of stifling where they're at. That you want to make it as easy as possible for new businesses to come along so they can get rid of the old. We want innovation. We want those workers who have been working at these industries for many years who have great ideas, for them to be able to go out and to start up their own business and say, you know what, I'm going to make things even better. I've got the experience, I have the know-how, and this is what I'm doing different so that we can make things better. But it's hard to do whenever you have a minimum wage, because whenever you're first starting off, chances are for many businesses, like if you're something simple like baking, or you're a carpenter or an electrician and you're going out there and you're doing that work, chances are you're going to be by yourself. And then as the workload increases, you're going to have help. And the sooner that you can hire somebody to do all this stuff, the quicker you can grow, and the better life can be for everyone. The better their baked goods are, the better the electrical work is done, because they're always coming out with new, better products for outlets, for wires, for fans, lights, switches, for all this stuff. So for example, whenever I was a little kid, I don't think they had like the little outlets that have the little circuit breaker built in them. And now today, that at least here in Texas, that if the outlet is within 5 feet of water, so in other words, a sink from a kitchen or a sink from a bathroom or a shower, you have to have that little circuit breaker in there, so then that way if it does make contact with water and it blows, it just blows that outlet right there instead of causing some kind of major accident throughout the entire house. And so how's the best way to do this? Is that you have to bring new people and new ideas. And that's very hard for an old company that has all these policies set in place that kind of hampers all of this. And also to help with this, this whole economic exploitation is Social Security exploitation. And this is the use of government powers to enable capable working people to stay out of the job market by, which is what's going on, what Ben Shapiro was talking about, by supplementing wages with taxpayer money. This system of corruption is further expanded by having This is further expanded on by having instituted the surplus worker exploitation up here, so these two go hand in hand, and the minimum wage exploitation, that they just kind of build on each other. And so the problem with Social Security is that people get on Social Security whenever they're perfectly capable of working. Whenever I worked for DirecTV as a technician and I was driving around all over the place in Texas, I found this constantly, that there were all these people who were capable of working and they weren't, because they had so many government benefits that they didn't have to work. And it was a complaint also of the businesses, that they needed people to work, but they weren't going to give up all these benefits to get the same kind of equal sum of what they were getting. So they might be getting like $14 an hour and some benefits. They weren't getting $14 an hour from the government, but whenever you look at the food stamps and the Section 8 HUD government programs and all the other programs that they had, and you combined it all together, all the benefits, and then all the benefits over here, and you put a price tag on it, it was more over here. And so it's like, why would they quit? I don't necessarily blame the people for taking advantage of a stupid system. I blame all these stupid people who implemented the stupid system in the first place. So it's a system of enabling instead of a system of, and I'm going to leave that part out because that's part of one of the things that I have for my site that I'm going to build here. And this is based off of a fallacy. I'm calling it the Materialism Fallacy, and this is a mistaken belief, especially based on the unsound argument that materialism is the only thing to live for and the only thing that brings happiness to life, ignoring other things such as friends, families, hobbies, activities, religion. All those other things can bring happiness. That you need to have this standard of living somewhere. Do you understand that we live better than kings and queens of old? And it's because before, in order to have clothing, you had to do all this sewing by hand. Before we had electricity, before we had sewing machines. That was extremely labor intensive. It took forever. But today, it's like my shirt here has double stitching going on. So in other words, there's two lines of stitch that are going on right here. So that makes the sleeve and all the hems around my shirt extremely durable because there's two stitch lines going across right here. And chances are this same thing with your shirt. And it goes on with the collar, and not only with the collar, but it's also real thick right here. So they really kind of layered it up, which makes it more durable. This is something that kings and queens in the royalty, before they had electricity, they didn't have this stuff. They didn't have motors and engines, so they didn't have buses, trains, planes, so they couldn't get food from other parts of the world. We lived better than they ever did. Rockefeller was one of the richest people on the planet whenever he was alive. But it didn't matter that he was one of the richest, powerful in the men on the planet, because his son still died because they didn't have antibodies during the time to be able to save his son. But today we have these antibodies, and we can save people from whatever disease his son had or whatever, and it has nothing to do with being the richest person on the planet. It has to do that, well, we had new innovation. We had these new breakthroughs that happened. And because of it, we now have these new industries. And so it created more jobs. And that's what we want. We want more jobs. We want more opportunities. And so the minimum wage increasing the standard of living fallacy, because that's what people always claim, is that increasing the minimum wage is going to increase the standard of living. And it's like, no, that's not what happens. What happens is that these businesses, they have to cut their staffs, they have to raise hours, they have to raise prices, they just flat out close, and it decreases the options for workers. So now let's go ahead and show all this stuff, because I'm not willing to just say that this is my opinion. I like to have something to back it up. So let's continue to watch Ben Shapiro here in another little part.
Yeah, the factors at play are that everybody had more savings at the end of last year than they had at the beginning of last year, because the government paid them, because they had to pay them to stay home. And then you just continued pumping money into their pockets. And then you said, you don't ever have to go back to work, basically, because we'll pay unemployment benefits all the way through September. Meanwhile, Elizabeth Warren and the left wing of the Democratic Party, who really rule the roost, they're saying, yeah, I'm delighted that Biden is governing like a radical.
All right. So that's enough from Ben. We're going to go ahead and move on. So right here, I wanted to talk about, let me shrink this, get this out of the way. Purchasing power. This is what you really want. You don't want more money. An economy collapses whenever you have the loss of purchasing power. And purchasing power is the amount of goods and services that can be purchased with a unit of currency. So for America, it would be the dollar. For example, if you take 1 unit of currency, a dollar, to the store in the 1950s, it would have been possible to buy a greater number of items than would be the case today, indicating that the currency had a greater purchasing power in the 1950s. Currency can be either a commodity money like gold or silver, or fiat money emanated by government-sanctioned agencies. And so we're going to look at Thomas Sowell right here, where he's going to talk about minimum wage and purchasing power. So we're going to start into the video a little bit, because it's just a little backfiller stuff, but the crux of the argument right here.
Have no conception about the minimum wage. They simply think, it'll raise the pay of people at the bottom, and that's a good thing. Well, what it really does, as you pointed out, probably more so than a whole lot of other people, is that it prices low-skilled, inexperienced people out of a job. Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was a teenager and had my first job, I thought my boss was very harsh. In retrospect, I don't know how the man put up with my incompetence.
Yeah, and so he talks about a little later in the video that he was making 40 cents, and they put in a minimum, or no, he was making 65 cents an hour, and then they put in a minimum wage of 40 cents, and it's like that did absolutely nothing for him. But then they raised the minimum wage, they continued to raise it up, and then that, if they had done that whenever he was working, that would have priced him out of the market. That he wouldn't have been able to have gotten a job because he didn't have the skills to do it. Where's that picture? Come on.
Out as a Western Union messenger, the minimum wage was 40 cents an hour. I started out at the bottom at 65 cents an hour. So it was the same as if there was no minimum wage. And this is what happened. You had this, and I was so lucky. I, of course, had no clue about any of this. Now,
and this is what it was for my dad. He talked about how whenever he was a little kid, for a dime, he could go out and for lunch get a burger, a Coke, and either fries or a candy bar. And it's because wages were nothing. And it's like today, with all of the technological advances that we've made, why have things gone up whenever everything has reduced in expenses? It's because of the government. Politicians do not care about what's wrong or right. They care about being elected. And how do they get elected? They get elected based off of what the public conceives to be right. And the public is wrong about this stuff because, you know what? Economics, for example, is difficult. It's not something that you can go to school and you can spend 8 years learning about economics to get a degree in something with economics. The same thing with medical. That's why we're getting all confused about COVID. Same thing with diet, nutrition, and all these things. It's not one person knows this all either. So these politicians, they're fully aware of it, that they are not versed as experts in every single subject out there, not by any stretch of the imagination. So they just go out there and they lie. So I want to show this little segment about Mr. Williams. Yep.
Because if it were an anti-poverty device,
age of $15.
that is utter nonsense. It doesn't even pass the smell test. Because if it were an anti-poverty device, well then, instead of spending all this money on foreign aid, we just have our experts at the State Department tell Bangladesh, well, you could be rich like we are, just have a higher minimum wage.
Thus, the consequences of minimum wage rates have been almost wholly bad, to increase unemployment and to increase poverty. Moreover, the effects have been concentrated on the groups that the do-gooders would most like to help.
And so I love this because this is Milton Friedman, and here he is talking back in like the, I'm going to say the 80s, and he's been talking about this since at least the 60s, where I found videos of him talking about this. This has been going on for decades. And then so here it is where we're going to see about the effects of minimum wage, because apparently the word is not getting spread around.
Business owners are struggling, trying to adjust to keep their stores running. One owner already closed his doors. Not on your sides, Priscilla Casper shares what one local owner is doing to stay ahead of the crushing costs of the increase.
My son's bar mitzvah is the day we opened it up.
Now those doors are closed for good. Dean Greenberg, owner of Shlomo and Vito's Deli, says the minimum wage increase to $10 an hour was the last straw before he shut down his 9-year business, laying off 43 employees.
Oh, that's great. This minimum wage just got 43 people fired. And there's no way to replace them because the business is closed. How does that increase the living standard? And it's because it's a play. It's a play on words and with the information. If you look at the entire workforce and everybody who's working, which is the majority of the population, and you look at the group of people who are unemployed, on social welfare benefits, and people who don't have any skills, they're a small portion of the workforce. So everyone else, they get a wage increase. And so that increases the standard of living for everyone else, but not these people. So if you go from $7.25 an hour and you double it to $15 an hour, that means more people are going to fall into poverty and they're going to have their wage restricted. And so what happens is that in order to compensate for this, they have to increase the cost of their goods. And so I actually wrote this down here. Or maybe I didn't write it right here. Yes, I did. Right here. And so what happens is that they have to cut staff. The ones who are there, they have to raise their hours. They also have to make them work harder. They have to raise their prices. They just flat out close. And then this also decreases the options for workers because now they have less places to go and work. So if there's a place that they don't like the boss, they don't like the way that they're doing things, they're kind of screwed over now because I don't have any other place to go and choose from. So what am I supposed to do? Well, you're screwed. You want the opposite. You want that plethora of jobs, of companies out there, so then that way they have to fight and be on good behavior and to take care of their employees to the best of their abilities, or their employees are going to leave and they're just going to go work somewhere else. I do not care for these people who own these businesses and they're making a lot of money. Yeah, I mean, it's good for them. I'm glad that they did it, but I don't want people to lie and to be scoundrels and to act like trash and to treat people like trash in order to get there. That they're stomping on the backs of the workers to be able to do this. It's like, well, you can't do that if they can just leave and say, adios, you know what, I'm going to go work somewhere else.
So there's a lot of more memories and emotions there than so many kids that I coach.
I don't care.
And costs to keep their doors open, offset the increase in costs. Trying to adjust to offset the increase in costs to keep their doors open. Gerard Muir, owner of Baja Cafe, estimates nearly a $100,000 increase in costs for both his restaurants.
We've already increased.
And so he talks about how he's increasing the price of coffee by 20 cents, and it's a little thing, but because so many people come in and they buy coffee, that's why that they do this. And so right here, I'm not going to go over this, but this video is called Why Raising the Minimum Wage is Bad. And I don't know who it is, but this is talking about supply and demand, and then what the wages and employees are affected with this. And so right here you have the supply and the demand curve, that where they meet is their equilibrium right there, where you can't increase the other one effectively, that you have bad things that happen from that. So for an example is if your wage is too high, then you don't have enough people to be able to meet the demand, and so the floor gets set whenever you have a minimum wage of like $7 an hour. And I'm not going to go in all this because you might have to watch it more than once to understand it, but whenever I was taking economics, this is exactly how it was explained to me, and it does make sense to me. I could be wrong, but I really don't quite think so. Also, I am going to have another link to another video, which I'm not going to go over, but if you wanted to understand this a little bit more, you can watch this. This is by Liberty Penn. This is Thomas Sowell again. The minimum wage exploitation. That exploitation, I mean, that just kind of came after. I did my little notepad typing in stuff first, and then I found this. And this might be off of his book, Knowledge and Decisions. I think that might be a book of his. I don't know. He's got several of them, but the way that this looks, it looks like to be from one of his books. But it goes into it in a little bit more in depth right there. So yeah, I just, it's all just a lie. Every last bit of it. You want more purchasing power. Whenever you increase the minimum wage, because politicians get to lie about everything, what happens? They did this in Seattle not too long ago. It's been a few years now, but they increased the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and then they went around and they talked to all these people, and it's like, oh yeah, it's really great for me. I kept my job. And these other employees lost their job, and I have to work harder now. I am getting paid twice as much, but I'm having to work twice as hard. And so if, in order to make that work, that now means that everything else costs more. So I've used this example before, is that if you're baking bread, well, it starts with the farmers and their hired hands going out there and growing the wheat. Well, all their wages went up because if the hired hands, if they were making $15 an hour, and now they're making the same as $15 an hour from some unskilled laborer, such as a high school kid or whatever, they're not going to be happy with that. They're going to say, no, you're going to pay me more. So they're going to have their wages go up. So that means that the price of wheat now went up. Then it has to be transported by some kind of trucking company. Well, they're now getting paid increased wages because they're like, I have all this additional training so I can drive a truck, and I'm not going to get paid the same as somebody who doesn't have any of these skills. You're going to pay me more. So the prices to ship the wheat goes up, and then it gets sent to a mill where it gets ground down into flour and then transported again to a bakery where they bake the flour into bread, and then transported again off to Walmart, and then it's at the shelves, and then you've got the employees there. It's also the mechanics who are working on the trucks. Their wages went up. It's every single job for every single business. So how many people are involved in farming? Well, the tractors, the combines, the seed, all the trucks, the increase in land, the trucks and the buildings for the trucking company and the mechanics and their tools and their equipment, their uniforms that they have. The same thing with the milling it down, and the machines that they have, and making the replacement parts and making the machines in the first place, and the building and the electricity and all the utilities, because those are also being run by companies that have employees. So everything goes up. Everything goes up except for the people who are poor, except for the people who don't have a job, except for the people who are still on benefits. They're the ones who just get left behind, and they continue. And now you've added to the people who are not working, who are now on government welfare benefits. You haven't made things better except for the privileged elite, except for the people who have the skills. So if you went through the education system and you went through at a bad school and you didn't get a good education, how are you supposed to be able to get anywhere in life? Well, one of the ways was that the minimum wage was not there, and so you could start off working just about anywhere. Yeah, you might have gotten paid like trash, but the purpose of that was not to give you a living wage. The purpose of that was to give you an opportunity to be able to develop skills, to be able to go up the ladder so that you could get yourself out of it if you wanted to. But you know what? There are some people who don't want that. I have no interest whatsoever of living in a $130 room mansion. It's like, why? There are other things in life that make people happy. So like I was saying here, friends, family, hobbies, activities, religion. I mean, there's more to things to life than work and money. Anyways, these are things that I have made up. These are things that have come to me that I have backing with right here. Help me fill this out. What are some of the things that you think should be added to this? And this is on either side of the coin. Things that are for it, things that are against it. I'm just tired of being lied to. And these are things that have been discussed forever. These are things where you can look it up, and it has, the decline of the purchasing power of the dollar. We have Milton Friedman who's talking about this back in the 80s. It's been going on for decades. Whenever Thomas Sowell, he saw this happening live as he was going older throughout the years with his job experience and with his education. And I'm referring to these people because Thomas Sowell is an economist. Milton Friedman is an economist. I do not care too much about these other people. I do not care so much about this business owner. He might understand his specific niche of being a business owner, but he doesn't understand the economy. And there was another one where I saw where it was another lady, and she was saying, oh yeah, minimum wage is going to be great. And she had no idea what she was talking about. She said a bunch of nonsense. So I'm going to have all this stuff in the description below, links to all this stuff so you can look at it and evaluate yourself. If there's something that you think that needs to be added to this, leave it in the comments down below and I'll look at it. Now, I'm not going to take it just because you feel like it or you think that this is right. You're going to have to back it up. I need proof and evidence. One of the things that my website is going to do is that it's going to make people kind of scientists in a way, to be fact checkers. It's like I'm tired of relying on all these scum and scoundrel people who are crooked to the core with all of this. So This is not just all of it. If you think that there should be something else that should be added to this, but this is an example of some of the things. One of the things that we definitely have to do is, what are the definitions with this stuff? The left likes to hijack definitions and change them up. What are some other facts? So one of them is that economies fail because of the loss of purchasing power. Apparently I can't spell to save my life. It's like, yeah, that's right. Whenever you go to Venezuela, they have all this money and wheelbarrows full of money so that they can buy toilet paper. You don't ever see it the other way around. Oh man, I used $1 and I bought a Lamborghini with $1 because, man, it's just how valuable $1 is. That's not the way an economy collapses. It's wrong. It's all backwards. It's all clown world. I'm going to stop. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Give me a like, a thumbs up, subscribe, become a member. I've got Patreon and Subscribe Star. It helps me out. So thanks a lot. Catch you later. Bye.